So the session now will discuss, with 4 banks that already set initial targets based on this journey of knowing impacts, setting the targets, and now delivering on the targets. So how they're doing it, and some of the successful stories, but also the challenges that they are facing. So it's my pleasure to invite to join me Filipa Carmona, Deputy Director Sustainability from Caixa Geral de Depósitos. Thank you, Filipa. Massimiano Tellini, Max, Global Head of Circular Economy at Intesa Sanpaolo. Nathalie, Jaubert. Oh, it's coming, okay. Nathalie, Group Corporate Social Responsibility, Deputy Head at BNP Paribas. If Frank, Jean, and now I don't know how to say your surname, but Frank Jean Risseeuw. Okay, thank you. Chief Operating Officer, Chief Transformation Officer at ING for Spain and Portugal. Thank you all for joining us today. So thank you and welcome, to the discussion today and this discussion now after looking forward to 2030. So just before, I give the floor to the banks here, I think some of the things we've heard also in the panel. So do you all have mic, right? Okay, I think this can be yours. Yeah, thank you. So a lot of things actually that we've heard also during the PRB journey, right? But I think one important thing also is that we need to be pragmatic. The targets and the actions need to be tangible, manageable, credible. So I think a lot of initiatives actually that the banks are taking, and I think what we see also when we have these dialogues with the banks is you need to know actually, and of course understand the impacts that you have, know what to focus on, because you can make a lot of efforts but with no real impact and no tangible impact at the end. So one of the things that we really discuss, and it's also linked to the PRB 2030, is how do we look to real-world impact? How do we look to what is the result actually of the actions that we are taking? And of course, the banks need to, to understand the context that they operate to do that, but also the business and your strategy and your bank's strategy. So I think the first question and we've tried also to invite banks with different areas of impact. So, all the 4 banks here, you all have climate change mitigation targets, but you also have other areas of impact that we are going to, explore a little bit here. So the first question here is really, looking to the decision actually to focus on the impacts that you're, focusing on, the setting targets, and etc. So I'll start with you, Nathalie, from BNP Paribas perspective. So you do have climate targets that are intermediate targets, aligned also, of course, with the goals of the Paris Agreement. Can you share a little bit of the journey and the discussions that you had internally to, select the sectors, to put the targets in place, and, any difficulties or, good learnings that you had?
Okay. Thank you. So yes, what I will share with you is the journey the bank had around climate mitigation, and it begins with something which is very obvious and didn't necessitate to have huge KPI and materiality assessment. It was the feeling that the bank was a big bank of energy and oil and gas. At the time, 10 years ago, we didn't have that much KPI to identify that, but we knew we were big. I mean, we knew we had a large market share. We knew we had large client. We didn't have exactly the numbers. We did that backwards, interestingly. But globally, 10 years ago, we knew that in our portfolio, around 80 to 85% of the energy we were financing was fossil fuel. So far before we begin to work on materiality, we had this feeling, and I think it's important because sometimes you guess what you have to do before you have the good indicator. And we decided to focus on energy, both electricity and oil and gas. It began very small. So on oil and gas, our first idea was, okay, let's begin by what we consider to be worse. So we begin to work on tar sands. Looking at the subject today, it seems that we did a baby step, but it was super important internally because it really raised awareness, put the issue on the table, and begin to identify who in the organization can help us work on the subject. Then our second step was around power, and that was also a kind of, not an intuition, but we knew that the big question was around coal, so we tried to identify how much coal we finance and where this was. So first step was really have a feeling of what we think is important. Then we improve a bit and we are less on this feeling and more pragmatic and more on data. And we begin to design policy. We know we want less tar sands or unconventional fossil fuel. We know we want less coal. So we began to have policy reducing what we can do, for example, in project finance. Then those policy have expanded around corporates. At one point, it began to be a bit difficult internally to have this kind of discussion because in CSR, we were thinking it's not enough. In business line, they were thinking it was too much. So at that point, we needed to do something, and we began working on indicators. So it began by something very simple, try to have a good photo of where do we stand. Try to identify how much really we finance in terms of fossil fuel in coal, and those were the first KPI. Then we knew that the photo was not enough and we need to set targets. And this is where the whole Net Zero Banking Alliance and the whole association were very helpful to us because we were all basically at the same level. We had a photo, we wanted to make a movie, so we needed to have really the scenario. Discussing both with other banks to understand what were the challenges with things like International Energy Agency or industry group was very useful to really understand what kind of data we need and what was necessary to define meaningful targets. And it sounds very obvious, but it took us a lot of time internally to really decide what was the good target, what is the good unit, what is the good perimeter, do we count anything in the bank from very small to very big, do we target large corporate? This kind of question, which usually don't make big headlines because they're very technical, are really key if you want to measure over time. So our journey is really a journey in terms of expanding the scope of what we are doing. We went from tar sands to power, oil and gas at large industry. We will do transportation, and we're working on agriculture. So we really broaden the scope, but also deepening the scope by having not only a photo, but a forward-looking. So just to give you a view, so 10 years ago, we consider we had around 80 to 85% of fossil fuel. We now have a ratio of 60 low carbon energy versus 40 fossil fuel, and our target is to be at 80 green versus 20 brown. So the idea is really to keep the same kind of indicator, but have a long-term perspective in order to really assess the shift we want to make.
Thanks, Nathalie. It's very interesting actually to hear the journey, and as you've mentioned, also with the Net Zero Banking Alliance, but also the groups discussions and the methodologies. I think now we have a little bit of clarity in terms of the indicators, as you've mentioned, the key sectors, the high emitting sectors. So we have more ground, I think, to work towards target setting as well on climate, yes. Right?
Just because we're not the only one, but I think most of the bank has not exactly the same journey, but very similar one. And we collectively all make a big effort to be transparent on our methodology. So it can be through groups like UNEP FI and ZBA, but it can also be in our publication, and we spend a lot of time reading our peers' publication to understand what is their journey and how we can assess. This is very helpful to us, this transparency, because it helps us raise questions we sometimes didn't phrase in this way, or find solution it would have taken much more time. So reading peers' documentation is also super helpful from my point of view.
And we see some of the climate reports from banks really describing, and even BNP is one example. But I think also, so we've discussed it also now, biodiversity. For other areas of impact, the pathway is not so clear as well in terms of the methodologies, the metrics, to set a good target. But I think it doesn't, it doesn't hold the banks of not getting the ambition there and really understanding more the issue. So Max, I'm going to refer to you at Intesa Sanpaolo, because Intesa is one bank that of course also have climate targets. You also work with financial inclusion, but you do have an extensive work also in circular economy. That is a concept that also needs to be understood sometimes in a broader sense, but also difficult to say, okay, what is a good target? What's a good metric? So how did you, decide actually to focus, and why did you decide to focus on circular economy and to put an ambition forward here?
Karine, first of all, let me thank you for having us here today at debating about this, and of course praising UNEP for the terrific work that you are doing, especially at this terrific time in history where multilateral organizations and work is so needed in, I guess, also steering the conversation in the right direction for the financial industry. I think that the big point here has been, for us at least at Intesa Sanpaolo, thinking that to have sustainable finance, we needed to redesign the economy. So this is where we started back in 2014, when actually, I would say that at least for the financial sector, circular economy was not a hot topic at all. And we started with a very, I would say, very simple kind of question, which is basically, what did it mean for us to be such a sustainable kind of financial institution? We have been always, like all here, very, very engaged in the sustainability trajectory, whether our clients would not be somehow engaged in the sort of same kind of ambition. So the answer did come from, I would say, a simple reflection that the actual system doesn't work. I want to be very provocative, as my sort of style, but we all understand that the business schools and I would say managerial programs do focus on principles of the economy, which has been designed more than 150 years ago. We are still talking about the linear economy. I had the chance to study abroad, and a professor at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology asked me, Max, do you realize that the MBA that you have been taking here has been designed in 1908 in Harvard? And the curriculum is still the same. And this was back in 2013. So the issue is, are we really sure that when we do talk about sustainable finance, we are talking about something which is coherent with where the economy has to go? The previous panel was addressing the question, where are we heading to? And so this is where we at Intesa Sanpaolo decided to embark on a very short, I would say, exciting but painful journey. We did become, and we are still today, the very first bank, global strategic partner of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which, as you know, is the non-profit, the leading non-profit globally, leading the conversation in accelerating the systemic transitions towards a circular economy. So, going to the point, why? I would say that we are increasingly, unfortunately, due also to the COVID pandemic, and even more so for the consequences of the war, that the interlinkages between the economy and society are so strong and everything is so connected that the systemic view of the circular economy is really needed if we want to address the root causes of unsustainability rather than the effects. And this is where we, partner with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we have been able somehow to steer the conversation, and still today, as Europeans, I guess, we can be really proud of what our leadership, institutional leadership at European level is doing. We all know, last year, March 2022, the European Commission issued a proposal to the European Council and the European Parliament stating that we, Europeans, are heading towards a circular economy. 500 million people that are headed by the institutions to create a circular economy, specific in two sectors, real estate and fashion, for example. But this is even more increasingly important for financial institutions because we understand that circular economy has a clear de-risking perspective from a financial perspective. We have been addressing this through a scientific research which has been carried out by University Bocconi in Milan. And we already published some of the results. So basically, a company going circular can have a lesser risk profile to both 1 year and 5 year terms loan compared to companies that do remain linear. So in a nutshell, it's of course painful because it's a matter of redesigning the concept of how you create value in the company and how you establish a long-term relationship with your client as a financial institution to make sure that the value chain approach is somehow elevated to make sure that we are able to somehow change the perspective, of course in line with the responsible banking principles, but even in making sure that we are able to reconnect business and society at the level where finance is becoming an enabling factor to create positive impact for companies and for the societies. And just as a last point, of course, we are talking about here a major impact in terms of how you need to educate leaders in the companies and in the financial sectors to be ready for the transition, because we are talking about the transition, but circular economy does require a profound change in the dynamics of business models of companies. We are not talking about only, if I may, sustainable products. We are talking about circular products. We are talking about the need for ourselves as citizens to change our habits in using and having access to the natural resources. So this is not just down to the political elite or the institutions, and we all know, and we've been debating already about the public partnership role that has been to be established. But even more so, we need to create and somehow solicit the demand for circular products, for circular solutions, servitization and all the like. Because this is where companies are heading to and where finance can really play a pivotal role in us accommodating the transition.
Thanks, Max. The second question, and I come back to you, I really want to understand more how clients are reacting and how you're executing the target, but I'll just hear our colleagues here on the topics that you're working on. But thanks, Max. Frank, so ING, of course, and also, again, has your climate targets. You've started with the Terra approach, so even 2019, if I'm not wrong. But you also work with social impacts as well. So you do, manage human rights impact, and more recently, you have a target to increase your clients' long-term savings capacity. So I think when we discuss also with banks, and we've just heard also in the PRB 2030, of course, we need to have the social component also, as one impact that the banks need to manage as well. So I really want to, understand your journey also to see, okay, climate is a big issue. We are addressing, setting targets, but we can and we should go for, forward also and look to the social impacts as well. So can you share a little bit, also in the social side, how to manage and how was the discussion to set a target?
Yeah, so thank you and great to be here. And as said, ING and sustainability is at the heart of our DNA, and that drives also the agenda going forward. And being represented in more than 40 countries, we can and we also should make an impact on those themes that you were mentioning about climate action as well as our social agenda. And that all starts with strategy at the top. And 2 years ago, our CEO, Steven van Rijswijk, revamped the ING strategy and put 2 key differentiators at the heart of the strategy. One was a differentiating customer experience, or superior customer experience, and on the other hand, it was sustainability at the heart. And by putting it there, that also kind of triggered the actions under it. And let's say that there's no escape possible for business units, countries, as we as Spain, to really make that agenda concrete. And that agenda was already quite concrete on the climate action side, as you mentioned, and also being part of this banking principles for many years, and eventually ended up in the Net Zero Banking Alliance. We created our strategy and our actions, concrete actions around specifically bringing, decarbonizing our lending portfolio of 600 billion in the Terra approach. Concrete 9 sectors, splitting it, coming with net zero pathways, and 5 are really underway, 4 of them, and we are not that far away, but also there, and we need to work with the industries, with the technology innovation to eventually bring that there. And in setting that concrete and measuring it in climate actions, I think that's also triggered to become more concrete on our social agenda. And that social or financial health agenda, you can split it into 2 parts. First of all, specifically on our retail bank, we put in our mobile applications, in our websites, really like tools and tips, insights to help make people the right financial decisions going forward. And that can be with Roundup, that can be with saving goals, to make not only looking at your banking balance or is it positive or negative to an amount, but more to, okay, what can I do now? What kind of choices I can make now eventually leads to the future. And specifically like in the Netherlands and Germany and here also in Spain, we see that that is really appreciated and that it gives kind of an extra layer for customers, but also for us to engage with a dialogue and to put that agenda to work. Being a bank and looking at our own customers, that's easy to reach, but we also see that as an institution we have a responsibility to the wider society, and there we have a clear focus and also policy that we are not looking into making money donations, but that we really put our core, our knowledge and who we are to work. And that's mainly around financial knowledge, about helping people to make the right decisions. And just to name a few of them, and I think the one which is the one that we're most proud of is the UNICEF. So 18 years of collaboration, and here in Spain, and we're helping the most vulnerable youth in making the right financial decisions and to make sure that they can live a life that they want to do, or to help them if things are not going in the right direction. But also with Nantigloom, which is a foundation here in Spain, we also have 2 collaborations. For example, the Faro project, where we not approach directly the end user, but more social workers that also comes in the environments to help them, to train them to make right financial decisions. And also another collaboration is around helping vulnerable women with a distance to the labor market to make the right financial decisions to get a better future. So we do a lot of things where on the climate action part, we see that it's really like tangible, measurable, very quantitative. Here it's more like qualitative and also an investment in the longer future, but really from the heart of what we believe we can contribute to that society. So if you ask to what are now insights or guidelines that you can give to banks, I think it's, of course, money donations are helpful, but I think in the long term, we need to put as a society, as a combination of all financial institutions, our knowledge, our insights, our smart people behind the bank to work and to really like bridge that gap to people that can really benefit from it. And also it's an enabler as well, because if you look to the full ING workforce of almost 40,000 people, we also get the question, okay, I see it in the strategy, it's important, but how can I help? I'm not working on a big financing deal, but I think with these kind of projects, everybody can contribute. And I think if we more contribute, it creates an oil effect in the company and also really give the tools for people to live up to that strategy.
Thanks, Frank. And I think I remember discussing with ING, because the target is really also linked to long-term savings capacity. So you do have like a quantitative also indicator here. And one thing that we've discussed is okay, but what's the national context for you? Is it relevant for the Netherlands? And actually it is, right? So you do have a number of people that do not save also in the Netherlands for the future. So I think also, it is a combination, as you said, when we look to social, of the qualitative elements and the quantitative context. And I think you did it also. And, let's discuss how are you doing that now. Yep. Next. Sorry, Filipa. Sorry. So Filipa, Caixa Geral de Depósitos also have, climate change mitigation. But, during the impact analysis, you've also identified a number of other topics, and a lot of them link it also more to a socioeconomic perspective, looking to Portugal, right? So you have housing, you have financial inclusion, you have employment, and, helping, SMEs also in the country. So we've discussed it a lot yesterday about, also the housing and the intersection between also this, this different impact. So can you share, how was the decision again to focus on this impact alongside, climate change, and how is it important actually for the bank operating in Portugal to connect that with your strategy to set the target?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate UNEP for this event, which is a mark in the PRB community. looking back for the last four years. And on behalf of Caixa Geral Depósitos, thank the invitation to share our practice on the impact analysis. In fact, the results wasn't a surprise for Caixa. As you said, one of the results is climate change, mitigation and adaptation, and also housing. And if you look for the mission of CGD, it's quite clear that we are aligned, and it makes totally sense to look for these two topics. But in terms of social perspective and impact, our mission is to create value to the society, to the Portuguese families and corporations, and to deliver quality financial products. And if we think that Caixa is almost 150 years of existence, and if we think that was the bank of the Portuguese society where the Portuguese leave their deposits and savings, but also and mainly to get a mortgage loan, we have to think in this context that is really important when we want to make a difference in our loans and in our mortgage loans. So also in Portugal, it is a trend that most of the families purchase a house. We don't typically rent a house. So the mortgage loan is one of the biggest service or product that Caixa has in Portugal, with a highest market share. And we have to think in this fact in a very critical way. How can we perform a better financing loans in Portugal and for the Portuguese? What should be the criteria to select or to influence the better buildings? And there's also another interesting fact to bring up, which is the quality of buildings in Portugal. Unfortunately, they are quite poor in comparison with the other countries. We know that the weather in Portugal is envied by the North European countries, but the truth is that the Portuguese envies the construction and the buildings of the Northern European countries, because they are much prepared for the cold and for the hot weather. And so this is a very it's a problematic. It's something that we as a bank and by our financings must make a shift on this topic. There are also a feature that is quite important. It's related to the previous one, which is the average of the energy certificates of the buildings in Portugal, which is on average C and D, which represents a lot of emissions, a lot of energy inefficiencies, and is something that we want to link with the other strategic area, which is climate change mitigation. So this must be aligned. I heard in a previous panel that when we define a strategy, we must define it in a broader view, linking with all the impacts that we have. And in fact, this topic of housing, it's very, very connected with the climate change performance of our clients. So we define this. We face a lot of difficulties when we look for this topic. First of all, data. We all have talked a lot of data in the last 2 days. The need to collect data, the difficulty to have data from our clients. So the first step was to understand what are the main energy certificates from our clients, gather all the information internally, make a study of where are our clients, they are more in the C certificates, D, E, and F, and then to start working with the commercial departments in order to define some specific products, to purchase, to influence our clients to buy a better energy building, and also to issue a green bond, which is mainly focused on green buildings. So the main difference from we've done before is the fact that now we can measure the impact of our financings towards more efficient buildings.
Thanks, Filipa. And we're going back again to the how, and I'll start with you again, Nathalie. So how are you delivering the targets? And, again, as you said, you see some progress already. So what are you doing internally and externally to deliver?
This question of delivering the target is quite complex because when we are a bank, we have two choices. Either when a client is not doing exactly what we're expecting, we say, well, we don't like him so much and we'd rather exit, or we try to do something. And we're spending a lot of time internally trying to balance those two things. Sometimes, to be honest, it's quicker to exit. It costs money. You know how much from the very beginning. Then your portfolio is cleaner. You have this feeling that you did your job, which is always very good. Nevertheless, in terms of impact, difficult to assess. So this is a quick question. We need to do something. We are a key actor in the economy. We're fueling the economy through the financing, but on the other hand, we are not directly producing energy or producing any kind of good or building houses. So one of the key questions for us is how to organize this balance between engagement and exiting a client. We do think that we need to keep this possibility to leave a client if really its strategy does not fit to what we want. But to be honest, in the discussion, we have very few clients saying to us, oh no, I don't want to transition. I mean, it may happen, but almost never. Most of them are proposing a transition, just we're discussing the pace of this transition. And one of the questions is really to understand, do the pace of the transition they propose align with their business model? Because very few clients have pure business model fitting exactly with the IEA or IPCC scenario. They usually have mixed business models. So a lot of the discussion is understanding what is their business model, what does engagement mean, what do we want in terms of KPI in their language, not in our own financial language. What does it mean in terms of value chain for them? Do we want to work on the upstream of their value chain? Do we want to work on having better communication of what they're doing so we can better assess what they're doing and transform that and analyze that? So this question of impact, and I'm just talking about climate, which, to be honest, is probably the easiest part compared to social or to circular economy, where we don't have this clear scenario. But even though we're talking about something we do have a unit to measure, this discussion of impact between the bank's policy and really on the ground results is difficult to assess. One of the solutions for us is around having business cases following specific clients, developing product with KPI designed for the client based on its business model and assessing how it works, reviewing this KPI, and it's happened very often that when we're doing, for example, the second SLL of a client, then we change the KPI to really address the gap that we identified earlier on. So no magic solution.
Nathalie, I think you brought some interesting points here. So one is, and the discussion that we have earlier, like the concept of the PRB is really to look to impact, and this is what makes the framework different as well. So I think there's no simple answer to what you're saying. So of course we need to deliver the targets that the bank has, but we also need to have this understanding, more holistic understanding of the impacts and how we are generating the impacts here. You've mentioned something also that it's interesting, and maybe now to Max on the how, that is also the value chain. And I think one thing when we discuss circular economy, we are, as you said, Max, also working and discussing the system. And a lot of your companies are also part of value chains. So I think the key thing for me is, again, and you're right, Nathalie, the discussions we have with the banks, at least for climate, things are clearer, and you have scenarios there, you have indicators and etc. And topics like circular economy, then it's more difficult maybe to assess what's the final impact that you are aiming to have. So can you explain how are you doing that, Max? And again, together with the business and together with your clients?
No, absolutely. We have been taking a very concrete approach since 2018, actually. So we have been putting finance available for our clients with a plafond, which is a circular economy dedicated financing for clients. we do assess through the sort of criteria that we co-developed with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the eligibility criteria for our clients to have access to this kind of discounted financing. And we have been so successful that we have been replicating this initiative with an additional 8 billion euros. So as of today, we are talking about 14 billion euros that Intesa Sanpaolo has been putting on the table for investments and financing innovative projects in the circular economy. Innovation is key. We are talking about a multiplier of investments. We are talking about innovation. We are talking about, of course, not only technological innovation. We are talking about new ways of collaborating through open innovation with our clients. Even between them, I mean, there are opportunities for clients in the value chain that were somehow overseen when they were still thinking in the linear sort of approach. And this is just to talk about finance. But then we have been establishing what we call a circular economy lab, which is exactly a sort of, I would say, partner of choice for our clients, where we tend to ask them to think again when we are hearing about projects that tend to be just sustainable. We want to have a sort of an extra mile going where we can share where innovation is proving that that kind of a product or that kind of process can become much more sort of resilient to future shocks. And this is where circular economy is coming. We are talking about de-risking perspective in the business models. This is where we believe, of course, European financial institutions are called for a collaborative action. We have been in talks with the European Commission. We have been also checking what is, as of today, within the green asset ratio, what is the circular economy component that the authorities are going to be measured, and we are understanding that there is maybe some kind of improvement on that direction. Because again, I want to stress again, the institutional leadership of the European Union is pretty clear and vocal. Franz Timmermans, Thierry Breton, and the German Chancellor last year had been naming circular economy as the strategic lever for the strategic autonomy of the European economy. Then, when we do talk about the sort of technical criteria, we are still somehow, to my personal opinion, still confined in what we do call the environmental component. The UNEP is able to link finance and environment. Circular economy is not the environmental component of ESG, for example. It's the new economy. This is crucial for us in Europe. An additional news about this is that on the 14th of February this year, the Financial Times ran an article where they were saying that the Inflation Reduction Act in the US did not contain the word circular. And the article says the competition between US and Europe has started on the circular economy. On the 15th of June, at the summit of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in London, a representative from the White House has said, we, in the United States, are choosing to become circular by law. This is what's happening. This is where competition is heading to, because this is a profound redesign of the industrial dynamics on how we do create value for our clients. So this is why the Circular Economy Lab is trying to help with connection, with education, and with advisory, our clients to understand that circular economy does have a sort of profound consequence in redesigning the relationship that our clients can have with their suppliers and with their customers. And as you said, this is key, because of course, as in many countries, SMEs in Italy are the backbone of our economy. But of course, SMEs are within value chain of big companies. So it's important they do understand this is the future, and this is how collaboration can happen to make sure that design, and you know, we Italians at design are pretty good. Design is key. The problem with sustainability, if I may, and I close this on a very provocative but constructive way, it's failing. Sustainability is failing at large. This is not my personal opinion. This is from John Elkington, 2018, on the Harvard Business Review, saying, he said, the father of the triple bottom line concept, I'm telling you, we are failing. We are failing because the sustainability agenda at large, the traditional one, if we may, has been busy with compliance. We have not been redesigning nothing. Again, 15 June this year, 30 May, the World Bank in Helsinki at the World Circular Economy Forum, the head natural resources department at the World Bank saying, we at the World Bank, we have the business of lessening the tremendous poverty for the world. We are failing. The World Bank is saying we are failing because the model is linear. What we need to do is to shift to a circular business model, to a circular economy. So this is where finance can really lead the conversation, and we are very pleased to see how the interaction within the responsible banking principle group with Intesa and UNEP is somehow also trying to understand whether there is an evolution for the principles along the principle of circularity, because this is where Europe can really lead a transition to make sure that we are able to walk the talk that we talk about.
Thanks, Max. And I think one thing that you've mentioned also, and we've discussed it, is also, you know, the urgency to move and to deliver on the real world impact. And again, you can have different starting points, but at the end of the day, we are talking about people's life, we are talking about the environment, we're talking about business models, and etc. So, Frank, so coming to you, so again, I think we've discussed it a lot in terms of, you know, companies and changing, you know, transition and again, understanding business models and etc. When we go more to the social impact, we are also talking about, you know, clients' behaviors and how to help your clients, as you said, and to educate, but help them to change a financial health or a financial, a financial behavior that they have. So what are you doing and how are you doing that? And you know, I know that it's a new target also for ING. It's not a new area of focus for you, but it's a new target, right? Yeah. So what do you need to change internally? What are you doing to really, you know, help your clients to also change?
Yeah, so important is that in the bank, everybody sits at the table, from HR, from operations, from finance, that we have the discussion throughout the company, and it's not just like somebody owning it. It's an agenda of all of us. Then secondly, it's about really putting to work in a strategy. And I already told, like, the group strategy, we translated into local, into 3 different pillars. The first one is lead by example. And why we start with that is that we also have to look to ourselves, like, okay, how are we organized? What are the choices that we make? So, and we look, for example, to our workforce. Are we really empowering them to have the tools to make these kind of decisions? But it's a mix of it. And do we also have enough female in our executive committee? So it's a kind of a range of very measurable targets to have in there. The second one is in lead by examples, also looking at our own operations, so at our buildings, at our the Moderator of flight, and for example electronic vehicles, because it's a bit strange that we go towards our customers and towards our wholesale banking talking about decarbonizing automotive, and that you walk in the garage of a bank and that it's full of petrol cars. Then you miss completely something. So it's looking at us to lead by example, to eventually make that step. The second pillar is more about empowering our customers with, on the wholesale banking, to guide them into the decisions, into support them with sustainable loans, with having innovative product solutions to help them in their roadmap. On the customer side, more on the retail side, it's indeed about what kind of products can we offer to help specifically on that financial health, on saving decisions, on right mortgage decisions. And I think in there, I agree with what you were saying, is that what we should not do is traditional products and paint them green, because then we miss something and we will definitely not go to the full potential, or maybe not only potential, but the ask that we need to do as banks. So it's really like rethinking from and what is the problem that we need to solve, what is the need of our customers, and then come up with new products. And then taking it close to my role, I'm also a transformation officer of the bank, and we're preparing, for example, the change portfolio for next year, and we really look toward what is the percentage of social/financial health products in there. And the good thing that it doubles year on year. And also, when we're talking about innovation challenges, we had one a few months ago. The good thing is that the organization by default comes with products that have these components in there. So that's linking back to lead by example. If you plant there the seeds, you will see it also further in the organization. And there we have to acknowledge that, and it's still a process, a journey to really find the right market fit. And you see that discussions, for example, in more the northern part of Europe, when it comes to green mortgages, it's more advanced than here in Spain. The good thing is being part of a group that we don't have to reinvent everything locally, but that we can take the learnings from there and to really make sure that we are not there with the products that when the market is there, but that we try to kind of create it also ourselves in that space. And the third pillar of our strategy is about contributing to society. What I was just mentioning there already in the previous question about the projects that we can do, but also from there we get the insights back to develop these products. And lastly, and it's not just to make it a PR story, but I think also to get the recognition for the work that you do, and not about greenwashing or PR, but just telling that the brand of ING stands for this transition and that we're taking real actions in that transition. So people, strategy, actions, and measuring it, and also everybody has targets from the CEO up to in Amsterdam to here on one of the elements or multiple elements of climate and social risk. And I think that's also locking or closing the circle.
Thanks. And I think you've raised interesting points, again, connected to the overall principles discussion. That is, it's not an isolated, target or an isolated topic, right? So you said, okay, if an external scenario changes also in terms of inflation, this needs to be reflected, and it's not just painting something green, but it's really rethinking, as also Mark said. So it's really like at the core of the principles as well. Filipa, I think one thing that it's interesting in your target, as you've mentioned before, is that it's a combination also with, the climate need, but also the housing need, right? So how do you deliver that? So how do you engage internally, but also with your clients to deliver it?
Well, I'm focused on two main principles of the impact methodology. One is the strategy and internal policies and procedures, and the other is the advocacy work that we are performing. And in this regards to housing, there were a need to reinforce the governance models internally in order to create an alignment through all the organization, through all the bank. Like ENG, we sit at the same table, colleagues from the risk department, rating department, marketing department, and so it's very urgent to have a standard, internal standard, to align all the work, and so we define and finish in July this year sustainable finance and energy transition policy, where we set all the categories that comply and that are pursuing the sustainable finance, also the responsibilities through the organization, and also some key performance indicators, and also onboarding and monitoring procedures. So it is, in fact, a change in all of the business, the way we perform business, the way we perform loans and select our clients, and to increase the criteria of evaluation of our counterparties. And for instance, for the commercial real estate, now we are asking for the localization of the asset in order to evaluate the physical risk of the asset, and ask several information about the building in order to be able to make the financing more effective on our targets. And as you said, the housing, it also are aligned with the transition plan that we also disclosed recently, where we have a very aggressive targets to achieve also in the real estate sector. And so all of this matched together, but the importance of have a very governance model internally is crucial. In regards to advocacy work, in Portugal, we have an energy agency that gathers all the energy certificates of the buildings in Portugal. And in fact, the banks now are working with them in order to gather the information in a more efficient way, and to define strategies to help the banks to engage with clients. So all the banks have the same problem, which is data, access to data, and include that data in our internal systems. And so we are promoting some workshops and working groups with a national energy agency, in order to make it more easily for all the banks and stakeholders.
Thanks, Filipa. And it's interesting because you have like 30% of market share, right? If you look to the number of customers in Portugal and the population. So the advocacy work is quite important. I'm afraid we don't have time actually for questions. So I just wanted to give like, a quick final comment from your side and final words from you. And I think just one last point from my side, as Filipa mentioned, the way we see it, the way the principal sees also, how to deliver and to put the targets into action and to deliver the targets. We say that, the key fields that the banks operate according to the impact methodology is client engagement, as we've saw here, portfolio composition and financial flows, so how do we change portfolio from one place to another, strategy and internal policies, as you also mentioned. And of course, I think the last point is what you mentioned, Filipa, in terms of advocacy work and partnerships. So I think, during the 2 days, we also saw that it's impossible to do it alone. So we need also to use, the targets and ambitions that we have to move forward with others. So 30 seconds for each of you, if you have final thoughts here. Oh.
Maybe just the fact that all those impacts are linked, and that even though we may assess impact on climate or on social, we know that there will be indirect climate. And I think one of the jobs we've got to do in the coming year is really trying to understand how social, climate, circular economy are linked together, nature exactly, to have globally positive impact. And this is still, I think, a field that we have to explore.
Yeah, I think and we share all the challenges that we see today and yesterday, and we all share them. So it's a matter of collaboration, learning from each other, and doing this together. I think the step from what we need to do to actions and to measuring, by time it gets more concrete. So I think it's also a matter of a journey, not being too obsessed, like I need to know what happens behind the comma. That will take some time. And what's more important, and also in the discussion that we have, to acknowledge that we have a lot of dilemmas. There's no yes or a no to it. And I think if you put it on the table, the discussion, I think that together with the other points, then you having the right actions to be taken. Thanks.
Yes, I would just highlight the fact or the importance of the financial sector are setting such high commitments. That for me it's the most important, because it will contaminate positively all the society, even though we cannot achieve some commitments or some plans. The financial sector has a key role to deliver and to set the path for the transition to 2030. Thank you.
I would say that we need to be really optimistic about the positive impact that finance can and must have in supporting the transition. I mean, starting from the reflection on circular, we didn't ask what finance could do for circular economy. We have been asking what circular economy can do for transforming finance and where we are. So I believe this is a collective action for change, and we are ready to take it.
Thank you so much, all. Thank you for sharing and for being with us here today. Thank you, all of you. Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.